Did you really want to be a CISO? Or do you feel that's the only way to make more money? Or that's the only way for you to get promoted? Or with one of them, they weren't happy being a security engineer, they weren't happy being a manager, and they've already invested 8 years in this field, so they figured, okay, let's just pivot. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO. Yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. Hope you are doing awesome. Hope you are having a wonderful year. We're at the midpoint, right? I was going to do a checkpoint podcast, but I'm just not feeling it. So maybe that'll be next week's edition of Life of a CISO. But really what I want to focus on is something that's been popping up with several of my new coaching clients. I've been getting on these calls with them, and I would always jump in with the assumption that they've already made the decision that they wanted to be a CISO, that was their purpose, that was driven, that's what they loved, that was their passion. But what I realized with a few of my new coaching clients, there wasn't the spark. There wasn't the excitement. So I started peeling back the layers, which is one of the things I normally do at the coaching, and I started getting down to really a more fundamental question. Did you really want to be a CISO? Or do you feel that's the only way to make more money? Or that's the only way for you to get promoted? Or with one of them, they weren't happy being a security engineer, they weren't happy being a manager, and they've already invested 8 years in this field, so they figured, okay, let's just pivot and try CISO, right? How much worse could it be, right? Type thing. And I'm like, that'll get you to be a good CISO, but it's not going to get you to be world class. To me, I care about world class. I care about you and you being happy and you living a life of passion and purpose more than what your business card says. If it turns out, and it seems like with this one coaching client, most likely we'll see if we continue, because like I said, if I can help you, I'll work with you. If I can't help you, I won't. I'm not going to just take your money. So we're at this point where I'm going to see, can I help them? Can I find direction? And there might be a chance that they go in a different direction outside of cybersecurity, outside of IT, because it's not something they really, really want. So my first question to you, if you're currently a CISO or thinking of becoming a CISO or down the road want to be a CISO, let's ask the real simple but powerful question. Do you want to be a CISO? Do you really want to be a CISO? Do you want to build strategy, sit in executive meetings, be a corporate officer, be a chief officer, be responsible for revenue and business, focus more on how to grow the business, how to strategically position it using cyber as a weapon, manage a team of engineers, prioritize risk, accept risk, being willing to realize that, hey, there's some risks we're going to have to live with, and then ultimately having that conversation when a breach does happen, saying, yes, it did, and we accepted that risk and we shouldn't have, or we accepted that risk and it was a good decision, and we move on. Is that what you really want? Is that what you really want to do? Because I've done a lot of podcasts on what is a CISO, but I realize many people sort of head down that career track based on default and not with a whole lot of thought. Right? I run into a lot of people. How many people have you run into where you start having a conversation with them? They're 12, 15 years into their career, and you ask them, hey, do you love what you're doing? And they're like, it pays the bills. No, do you love what you're doing? I'm making really good money compared to all my other friends and colleagues. Okay. Do you love what you're doing? And they're like, not really, but I have 5 more years till retirement. Then I can go and pursue something different or something else. And I'll tell you, that's no way to live. Right? That's no way to go in and live a life. So what we're really talking about here are 3 fundamental questions. So the first question is, where are you currently going? So if you look at your current trajectory, think of it like you're a plane that has been flying, and you've been flying for a couple of hours, and you sort of have this route. If you keep drawing that route for another 4 to 5 hours, where do you end up? Where do you end up going? So look at your current career on the last couple of years. Look at what you've been doing. Look at salaries, look at position, look at the type of work, and look at all those factors. And more than 3 years is better, right? 3, 5, however many years you have doing what you're doing. But sort of project out saying, okay, if I continue doing what I'm doing, where am I heading? Where will I be in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? And is that really where I want to be? Right? We really have to have that deep discussion, because I was working with somebody who was a security engineer. They were doing extremely well. They were super high powered. They were making about $200K. They got about a 5 or 10K raise every 12 to 18 months. But when you talk to them about their goals and their vision, they wanted to fly in private jets, have Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Bugattis, and wanted to live in a penthouse on the beach. And I'm like, awesome, dude. But the current path you're on is not going to get you there, right? 200K, adding 10K, even if we be aggressive and add 20K every year, you're not going to get there, my friend. So we need to do a major trajectory change with you. We need to get you to start building businesses or advising businesses where you get a % of the business, or you go in and you start up a company with intellectual property that you have, you get investment funds, and then you ultimately exit in 5 to 7 years. But we need to put you on a different path than the one you're on, if that's ultimately what you want to accomplish or the targets you want to hit. And notice how I do it differently. Most folks you talk to, if you had somebody who's making 200K a year and they said those dreams that they wanted, their goals, their targets, most people would say, unrealistic, can't do it. And essentially they wouldn't, and then they just live a frustrated life. My point is, listen, your targets, your goals, what you want to accomplish, that's you. I'm not here to judge it. But the question is this: are you willing to do what it takes in order to make that a reality? I have folks that come to me at events. I do a lot of events where I get college students or people 1 year, and they're like, Eric, can I be a CISO in 3 years? Sure. And I look back going, are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to do what it takes in order for that to happen? Are you willing to work 10 to 12-hour days at a job and then put in another 3 to 4 hours in the evening improving yourself? Are you willing to go to events and conferences and invest in yourself on the weekends? Are you willing not to go out with friends in the evenings? Are you willing not to have a vacation for 3 to 4 years? And it's funny when you start pulling those strings, because what do you normally get? Wait, so you're saying, Eric, I can't have a life? I can't. Wait. You're the one that said you wanted to be a CISO in 3 years, not me. So I'm just telling you what it will take in order to do that. The problem with most people is they have targets, goals, or outcomes that they want, but they're not aligned realistically with what it will take in order for that to become a reality. They're not willing to put in the energy or effort in order for that to be able to happen. So once again, do you really want to put in the time, energy, and effort to be a CISO? You absolutely can, but it's not going to be something that just naturally happens. Where are you currently heading? If you're currently heading to be a world-class security engineer in 15 years, you're going to have to make some major trajectory settings in order for that to happen. If you're currently a security engineer and you want to be a world-class or a senior security engineer or a chief scientist, then we have to make minor adjustments. Right? So notice what we're doing here. We're first getting very clear on what do you really desire? What do you really want? And hopefully it's to be a chief information security officer. It's to work for a large company or even be a vCISO where you have 3 or 4 high-powered clients that you go in and you do advisory services, build out strategy, build out game plans for them. But the first most important thing is, do you really want what you're saying you want? Do you really want that? And are you willing to put in the time, the energy, and the effort to make that a reality? So that's the first piece. Then we say and say, okay, where are you currently headed? Where are you currently going with your career? Well, so many of us get on autopilot where we wake up in 5 or 10 years and be like, what just happened? Right? How did I get here? Right? How did that occur? It wasn't really conscious decisions. It just sort of occurred. Right? It just sort of happened. So I don't want that to occur to you. I know I've used this before in some of my podcasts, but it is, I love movies. And what I love about movies are the lines in the movie, right? The 1 or 2 takeaways in the movie is what I really enjoy about them. So it's Bad Boys for Life, but there's a scene where Will Smith is sitting with the lieutenant and he tells this story. There's this monk going up the mountain and he's walking up this path. And as he walks up this path, a man on a horse comes flying by out of control, and the monk has to jump into the bushes to avoid being trampled. And as the monk gets up, he looks back at the man on the horse and screams, "Where are you going?" And the man on the horse screams back, "I don't know, ask the horse." Right? And that, unfortunately, is the reality of many people's lives, where the horse is influence from friends or family, what your parents want you to do, what you think you need to do, or what is easy or what is simple, or just it happened to be the job you got out of college and you just ended up staying there. But there's not a lot of conscious thought around it. So then we come back to, we have our first question, and I do this with myself all the time. I'm actually in the middle of it right now. I'm going to delve more into it this weekend. I blocked out a few days, but it's really, okay, Eric, where are you currently going? Where are you currently headed based on what you're doing, what's happening, what's occurring? Then the next question is, what do you really want? What is it that you really want? If you could go and build out or design the ultimate life for you, what would that be? What would that look like? What job would you have? And this one, I will tell you, learning how to do this simple exercise correctly is the difference between successful and average people. Because what happens is with average people, they either won't do this, they won't ask the question, or they talk themselves out of it. So you go in and say, what do you really want? And they're like, I would like to have my own business where I'm bringing in $3 million a month and I'm making $30 million a year with 50% margins. So I'm bringing home 15 million in my pocket a year. And then either themselves self-talk, and they talk to, oh, there's no way that's going to happen. Right? You can't do that. That's not just, that's not reasonable. What are you thinking? That's a pipe dream. Come on, man. No one in your family has ever made that. There's no way you can ever do that. You never made more than X amount. And you end up doubting it and convincing yourself that it's not what you really want. The question is it what you really want? Right? If it's what you really want, then have it. I sort of have an interesting philosophy. Sometimes when people hang out with me, they sort of double take because I love exercise, I love fitness, and I'm in fairly good shape. Actually, not bragging, but I would say compared to most 53-year-olds, I'm actually in probably really, really good shape for that. But everyone always thinks because you're in good shape and you have some good muscle mass that you must eat like ridiculous. No. The other day, I wanted a piece of pizza. So guess what? I had a piece of pizza, right? To me, now I enjoyed, and here's the difference. I enjoyed that piece of pizza. Oh man, those little mushrooms dancing in the pepperoni grease. Oh, it was good. It was good, right? Little garlic and Parmesan on top. Oh, I was enjoying that pizza, right? I was having a good time with that pizza and enjoying every single moment of it. And this, to me, life is simple. If you want it, you want it. Now, you need to recognize that there's consequences or issues, right? If you want a piece of pizza every hour of every day, right, that's a little different. But I'm of the mindset that you need to enjoy life, right? You can't sit there and have chicken and rice 5 meals a day for the rest of your life. Yes, there's some discipline that needs to be put in play, but if you want something, you want something. So to me, do you really want that? If you really want that, if you really want to bring in 30 mil and take home 15, then you need to own it and start making it a reality in your mind. And then recognize and say, okay, and here's where the fun begins. This to me is the fun part. The where you're going question is really just a ground truth. It just sort of wakes you up on, okay, this is where you're headed, and it's probably not where you want to go, and it sort of wakes you up a little bit. The second question, what do you really, really want? What do you desire? What are you willing? And here's the other part to it, the sub-question. It's not just what do you want, but what do you want with enough conviction that you're willing to put in whatever it takes to make that happen? What do you want that you're willing to make sacrifices in your life in order for that to become a reality? So now we're going a little deeper here. Are you willing to put in the time, energy, and effort? Remember that person who just graduated and asked me if they could be a CISO in 3 years. And it turns out that it sounded cool to them. Like they thought it would be cool in 3 years at 27 years old to be a CISO. They thought that'd be cool. But they didn't really want it or desire it because they weren't willing to put in the work. As soon as I started telling them what it would require in order for them to be a CISO, they all of a sudden basically said, that's not what I'm willing to do. So it wasn't really what they wanted. Because if it's what you truly want and desire, you're willing to put in whatever effort and energy is needed or required. So you got to get the conviction in place for that to be a reality. And then here's the fun part with the third question. Who do you need to become in order to get what you want? Because here's the reality. The current version you are today, if you were able to make $30 million a year, you would have. If you were capable of doing it, you would have done it. Which means the current version of you, and that's why we did the first question, where are you headed? The current version of you on where you're headed has zero chance of getting what you want. It has zero chance of making 30 million a year because if it was capable of doing that, it would already have done that. So you're going to have to become a different person. you're going to have to focus in on three basic things: identity, belief, and value. Who do you have to identify as in order to make $30 million a year? What do your beliefs and values need to be in order for that to become a reality? Basically, how do you show up? How do you think? How do you act every day? Because the reality is, somebody who makes $30 million a year thinks, acts, behaves, and views themselves differently than somebody who makes $300K a year. It's just a fundamental, basic truth of how it works. So you then have to figure out who you need to become, how you need to think, and how you need to act in order to get what you want. So those are the three questions I want you to work with. But now I want to tie it back to CISO. Because like I said, these last couple of months, I've been noticing a shift in the clientele that I'm working with, which is awesome. But it used to be a lot of folks that basically knew they wanted to be a CISO, they knew they could be a CISO, and they just needed to get the facts, the technical knowledge, the CV, those other pieces in place. But now what I'm noticing is there's people that are saying, they're not saying this, but they're saying this. What they're implicitly saying to me is, Eric, it seems cool to have a CISO title. It seems like it would be fun to walk around with business cards that say CISO on it. But I don't really know if I want to be a CISO. I don't know if I really want to put in that energy or effort or that excitement. I don't know if I want to be a chief officer. I don't know if I want to have corporate liability where I could actually have criminal charges brought against me by the SEC if I don't show up, behave, or act correctly within the business. So a lot of folks are starting to even question that fundamental fact. The next group is, and I saw this with a few folks where they're doing everything I'm saying. Everything I'm telling them to do. Put out 2 videos a day, they're putting out 3. Read for an hour a day, they're reading 2 hours a day. Going in and putting out articles and doing business and giving keynotes and presenting to boards. They're doing all of that. But the CISO jobs are not coming. And that's a new area for me because usually you do the work, you get the output. So I'm sitting there and I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit going, what's going on? And what the reality is it's that middle piece. They want to be a CISO, but they don't believe that they're really a CISO material. They really don't believe that they could be a CISO. They don't really believe that a company would hire them, pay them $400K a year with a $200K bonus to run the strategic cybersecurity for their business. And that's the problem, because you can go in and put in all the energy and all the effort, but if you doubt yourself, if you go in and start saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, right? It's not going to happen. You see this all the time with these professional athletes where they get themselves into these slumps. World-class athletes. They were dominating their sport. They were like top in the sport, number 1 in the sport. And then all of a sudden, during a season, they have a month or 2 months where it just nothing's working. They're missing every basket. They're striking out every time they're out there. They're missing every throw, whatever sport you like or enjoy, and just nothing is clicking. And in almost every single case, when you sit down and talk to them, and I have had the opportunity to work with a few of them, and they really start being honest with you, it always comes down to they stopped believing in themselves. Eric, the first couple of seasons was a fluke, but then I had the injury and I just didn't recover, and I'm just not as good as everyone thinks I am. And there's always some doubt in there. And then here's the trick. Some of them, unfortunately, never overcome the doubt. And those are the ones that sort of sizzle out, the one-hit wonders. You've seen these athletes 2 or 3 years, or they take their team to the playoffs and then you never hear from them again because they just were never able to get out of their head. They were never able to get back to that conviction point. But then you see the others where they just go in and they're able to click and get back to it. I'm from New York Giants, which means I am supposed to hate Tom Brady with a passion, which I'll tell you, the more I studied him and the more I've worked with him and talked with him, I respect the heck out of that guy. Because that guy is human just like everyone else. He gets into slumps like everyone else, but he can get out of it pretty quickly. Imagine you are in the biggest stage in football, the Super Bowl. You're in the Super Bowl, everybody is watching, and at halftime, when you run into the locker room, you look up at that scoreboard, and it says 28-3, and the 3 is under your team. For half of the game, you were not capable of scoring a single touchdown, while the other team scored over 4. You were not able to successfully move the ball other than one play that ended in a field goal. How are you thinking about yourself and the game at that point? I mean, most people, you're done. I mean, because you're like, I can't complete a pass. This isn't my day. This isn't my moment. It's just not working. We're not connecting, and it's done. But imagine what it takes to basically reset your mind and say, that was interesting. Those first 2 quarters, that's not what I thought was going to happen. That's not what I wanted to happen, but it happened. But I'm going to let it go. And now I'm going to go and say, okay, who do I need to become in order to win this football game? Who do I need to become to basically not only score 25 points in the second half, but convince my defense to show up in a way to let the other team score 0 points in the second half? Who do I need to become in order for the entire trajectory of this game to pivot and shift dramatically, that we actually win the game? That is a huge disciplinary action, but to be the best, that's a skill you have to master. That's a skill you have to become very, very good at. So it's a skill, because my clients needed it, that I became good at coaching people and also doing it to accomplish that. So what I found with many of my clients is they're doing the work. They're putting in the reps, but in the back of their mind, they're still saying, I'm not CISO material. I don't think I can perform the job as a CISO. And the problem with that is that's something that goes on typically in the unconscious. I mean, those are thoughts and ideas that pop up that they're not necessarily even consciously aware of, which makes it hard, because if they're not consciously aware of it and they're not telling me, then how am I going to figure it out? But here's the thing I learned. The results speak louder. If they're working with me and they're doing everything they say they're doing, and in 3 to 4 months we're not seeing results, I now know with 100% certainty that it's a mindset issue. That's because they do not believe they are CISO material. So then we spend the time, energy, and effort on basically saying 2 ways to do it. One is convincing yourself that you are, and that works with some people. That works with some folks that, hey, this is just false. This is a false belief that's not true. You absolutely are CISO material. However, some people that's harder for them to believe. So the other thing is, okay, what are the 3 things we need to do? Who do you need to become a CISO? For you to believe that you are CISO material and you are worth over $500K in compensation, who do you need to become? And then based on what they tell me, that then becomes our track for the next 2 to 3 months, having them become that person. And now notice, now instead of convincing you you are who you think you're not, which is a hard thing to do, because if you don't think you're something and convincing you are, it can be done, but not easy. But if I go, okay, you don't think you're this person, but if we make you this person, now all of a sudden you can believe that you're a CISO. So that's the other trick that I've added to my arsenal that I just wanted to share with you today is, what changes do you need to make in order to turn into the person that you will believe can accomplish what you ultimately want? But at the end of the day, remember, it's a simple, basic question. Where are you currently heading? What do you currently want? And who do you need to become? And hopefully, all of that's aligned with becoming and being a world-class CISO.